Looking for a super easy blouse to stitch up? I got you covered. Hello makers, I'm Catherine from Stitchery, and this week I wanted to share with you a pattern review for the Norma blouse by FibreMood. Now if you're looking for the sew along, I will link that down below, but be sure to stick around for this pattern review so that you can get all of the tidbits on my thoughts before you start this project. So this pattern is fantastic for a beginner sewist, and you can complete it in about an afternoon. Now it is made for woven fabrics, and you can use a lot of different varieties of woven fabrics for this blouse, things that are a little bit lighter to give a more billowy feel, or something a bit more structured like the cotton that I decided to use here with these wonderful bumblebees. And if you're interested, there is a kit from Minerva that has absolutely everything that you might need to create this. I'll also link that down below if you want to make the exact same blouse as me. Now, this pattern comes in UK sizes 32 through 58 or US sizes 0 through 26. There is only one view for this blouse, which is totally fine. Now, when I was looking at the size chart, my measurements fell in one size for waist and hip and one size for bust, and I typically have to do a full bust adjustment. When I looked at the finished garment measurements, I decided to go with the size that aligned with my waist and hips because when I looked at the finished garment measurements, there was enough ease in the bust for it to fit comfortably, and I was okay with that. Do not do that. Go by your bust measurement. It's meant to be a little bit oversized. Don't go by your waist and hip measurement. I was worried it was going to be a little too boxy. And when that happens, it can tend to look a little bit frumpy and not like it actually fits you. Hence the reason I decided to go with something with a little less ease in the bust, but there was still ease there. And so what I ended up having to do, which I haven't done it yet, but I will do it before I film the B-roll for you, is add an additional button in the bust because my buttons are gaping open. So I should have gone with the at least one size up from that waist and hip measurement. My bust was actually 2 or 3 sizes above where the waist and hip was. So there was kind of a drastic difference in that. And so I just caution you, maybe make up a muslin before stitching this up, especially if you tend to have to do full bust adjustments or even small bust adjustments, just to make sure that it is fitting how you want it to fit. In terms of how it fits everywhere else, it's great. It sits nicely just below my belly button, so it's great to wear with high-rise bottoms or even something that's a little bit mid-rise or lower rise because it's got that nice placement. It's not too short and it's also not too long. So you can tuck it in or you can wear it as a nice loose top. I actually really like the sleeves. I have been very passionate about statement sleeves in the past year or so, and they have been really big on the high street and all of the fashion trends. I actually really like this one. So this one actually has a cuff around the sleeve, so it's not elasticated. So it's just stationary with that. One thing that I probably would do is make my cuff just slightly wider when I'm making it. Now the piece is very narrow and it gives a nice narrow cuff, but I probably increase that by about 1/4 of an inch in terms of the width and probably increase it by about 1/2 inch in terms of being able to get my elbow through. Now it goes through fine on me, but if you have larger arms than me, then you might have some difficulty and it might be slightly uncomfortable right where it sits along the elbow because I don't have a lot of room here. I have about 1/2 inch of room. So if you have wider arms, I would consider just increasing that band ever so slightly. Now, one of the features that I actually really liked on this one is the way in which they do the button placket and bottom hem. So it actually goes in so beautifully. It looks very professional on how it is finished, and you get nice crisp edges along the front as well as on the inside. So this would be something that if I was making another blouse that didn't have a placket that functioned the way this one does, and it's a placket that uses a sewn on facing to create that placket. I would actually parlay that into another pattern because I actually really like the way that they stitch this up. Now, one of the things to note on this pattern is if you get the paper version, which I have right here, you actually have to go down to their website and download the instructions if you want written instructions. It does come with the printed diagrams, which is great. And if you're an experienced sewist, you can basically do it looking at those pictures. But if you're the type of person that needs to have the pictures as well as the written instructions, you want to go down to their website and download that. Now, as well, I have the paper version of this. You will have to trace it out because the way that they printed their pattern is they printed it double-sided, and then they also decided to overlap some of the things. So you have two pattern pieces that are overlapping each other. So if you struggle with your vision and being able to follow lines, this one might not be a great pattern for you. That being said, there are a ton of other companies that do this. If you've ever had one of those Berta magazines where they have all of the lines crisscrossing everywhere with all of the patterns, it's very similar to that. Now, it's only one pattern, not multiple types of patterns, but you will have to be able to navigate that a little bit. And another thing that I wanted to mention is some of these symbols that they use are slightly different than the ones that you might be used to if you're used to stitching up patterns that are from the US, Canada, or the UK. Now, the fold symbol is a little line with a little horseshoe shape and then another line, which symbolizes to cut on the fold. Whereas the patterns that we have in the Americas and in Britain, it tends to be the double arrows pointing towards the fold. I'll show you an example right here on what that would look like. So you just need to be cognizant of that. One thing that I found rather annoying about the pattern pieces themselves is they, number one, don't tell you what the pattern pieces are. In this pattern, it's very easy. The sleeve looks like a sleeve, the bodice looks like a bodice. But if you were to have a more complex pattern, it would get pretty annoying. So they do number them, and you have to refer back to your instruction manual to find out what the pattern pieces are. And another annoying part, they do not tell you how many pieces you need to cut out of what fabric on the actual pattern pieces. Once again, you have to refer back to your instruction booklet. So if you're someone who doesn't necessarily read the instructions first, don't do that, but I am notorious for not reading the instruction booklets first before I start a project. It can be a little annoying to have to rummage through and find the page that tells you what you need to cut out. Now in this, it's pretty self-explanatory. You're gonna want 2 sleeves, 2 of the front and 1 on the fold of the back, and then of course your facing pieces. But if it was a more complex pattern, I think that having all of that information actually on the pattern piece would be very helpful. So when I was tracing mine out, I decided to actually include that in. Now, in terms of difficulty, this one is definitely rated that beginner friendly or advanced beginner. And the reason I use advanced beginner is because the instructions aren't that thorough. They expect that you have at least some sewing knowledge going into this. That being said, it really walks you through step by step how to do it. It's very simple. You don't have to do too much. The probably most difficult part is these very narrow cuff pieces that are a little bit fiddly, hence the reason my tip from before is to increase the width just slightly. Now, if you enjoyed this video, do give it a big thumbs up and consider subscribing. That really helps me out to know what type of content to make for you. And if you haven't checked out my website, do be sure to go there. I've got a ton of freebie patterns on there, as well as some of the own patterns that I have drafted for you. And do be sure to check out my socials on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. I am Sheer Stitchery. Until next time, makers, let's get our sewspiration on.